Aboriginals. We're in talk mode. I've just finished listening to the Labour Files and bloody hell. There's a lot to unpack there, but I don't know if there's much more value I can add than what I said in my last episode, No Trust, Endless Trust. And essentially, watching the Labour Files just makes you realise how corrupt politics really is. And it doesn't matter which party you vote for, there's gonna be some things that just don't make sense. And once you realise what's going on behind the scenes, you just won't trust any of them. So that's great. I guess I'm not voting Labour anymore. Not that I was completely convinced on voting for them, but it would be the right thing to do if all you want is to get the Conservatives out of government. Well, like I said, I'm not huge on politics. It's just I'm taking an interest right now with what's going on in our country. However, there's a bigger issue that was addressed in the Labour Files that I feel is more important to consider, and we're talking about anti-Semitism. Now, I consider myself to be a citizen of the world, man. I don't care what religious, political, racial, sexual, whatever. I don't care what background you come from. As long as you're a good person, you're a good person. That's it. That's all that matters, really, to me, personally. You know, I have my own political, religious, whatever beliefs, but generally speaking, I feel like, yo, we're all, what do you call it? Humankind, innit? We're mankind. Uh, I feel like we should all be supportive of each other and trying to ensure that everyone is doing well and getting on with things. But getting back to anti-Semitism, one of the points raised in the Labour Files was there were like 56 Jewish MPs that were investigated, suspended, or expelled for being anti-Semitic. And it's like, how does someone who is Jewish be anti-Semitic? Like, that doesn't make sense. And that's because the Labour Party's definition of or certain members of the Labour Party's definition of anti-Semitism was anyone who spoke out against the state of Israel. And that doesn't make sense. And it begs the question of a wider issue across society is how how do we end up painting people of a certain country with the same brush as the political ideologies of the higher ups in those countries, or the actions of their government, or other things. It's like right now with the Russia-Ukraine war. Yeah, we're saying Putin is doing some bad stuff and hurting innocent people, and that's the bad part. But you're not going to start attacking every Russian based on that. It's not their fault. They're not the one making those decisions. Whether they support them or not, that's a different story. But we can't be attacking anyone from Russian heritage or Russian citizen or whatever else based on the actions of the elites at the top of the chain. By the same token, criticizing a government's actions does not mean you're against the whole population, right? So you can't call someone anti-Semitic for criticizing the acts of war that are being committed by Israel against Palestine. You can't say someone's anti-Semitic for criticizing that. And by the same token, if someone was to criticize Saudi Arabia for their human rights records, I wouldn't call that person Islamophobic. Like, it doesn't matter that the country in question may be governed by certain ideologies or claim to be governed by certain ideologies. That doesn't mean that if you criticize that government, you're criticizing a whole people or religion or any other thing. You're just criticizing the specific actions of those specific people who are in charge of that specific country, right? And that's why people are condemning the actions of Israel against Palestine. And by the same token, people can um, criticize the actions of Saudi Arabia against, people in the country, human rights, whatever you want to talk about. And again, the same token, like a lot of us, the general population, if you ask them today, we would criticize both the US and the UK for going to war with Afghanistan and Iraq. And that wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you're anti-Christian now. These are predominantly Christian countries that, there's a lot rooted in the laws and stuff that are related to Christianity. You wouldn't consider someone to be against Christianity if they're against the policies of the UK or the US government. So how the hell does it become anti-Semitic when you're against Israel or the policies of Israel or the actions of Israel rather than the country itself? Like, how does that make sense? Why is it one rule for one and one rule for another? So does that mean anytime like we have someone like complain about you, like it's the same thing, isn't it? Like you complain about Chinese human rights or whatever, you're not against the Chinese people, you're against the autocratic um state government that they have, right? This is a Russian issue. You're not against Russian people, you're against the actions of Putin and what he's doing in Ukraine. Why are you painting everyone with the same brush? That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, that's kind of what I took from the Labour files. Like that was the bigger point. Yes, okay. Point one, don't trust anyone in politics because they can fuck you over anytime and be bought at any time. But second was there's a real problem where logic has left the building in society nowadays. It's like you can just once someone you just need one person or a group of people to start painting someone with a brush and that's it. It just sticks, and that's a real big problem, man. It's a real big problem. It feels like not all of society, but a lot of society just doesn't think about it. Like you get a narrative from mainstream media and that's it. You just believe that and you run with it. It's this whole, again, we could talk about Russia, Ukraine, but like the narrative right now is, Russia has decided, yep, we're just randomly going to start killing all these mans in Ukraine and take over. And regardless of the narrative, it's awful that innocent people are dying. There's no question about, and that shouldn't be happening anywhere in the world. So that part, yes, but like no one thinking for a second that surely there was something. What set this off? What's caused it? Let's look at the history of the situation. Let's talk about what's been happening over decades rather than just over the last 12 months, and then determine from there, come to our own solution, resolution, conclusion, whatever you want to call it, of what's going on in our world. And it's the same story, man. Same story. Like we all believed when the US said, "Yo, Saddam's got nuclear weapons," we all like, "Yep, that's right, that's it, let's go." And then they said, "No, no, no, sorry, we were wrong." And you'd think that the most powerful country in the world with the best intelligence services in the world would get something like that wrong. Seems unlikely, doesn't it? But no one's questioning if that wasn't their motive, what was? Like we've all just been like, yeah, okay, it's done now, innit? It's the same thing with other wars that have happened, across the globe. It's like do we don't we get given a narrative and we just stick with it. what's happened to critical thinking in our society? We've all kind of just become sheep, all worried about what's going on right in front of us, and then that's how they keep us busy, isn't it? And then the other part of this that really like irked me. I started off this podcast by saying I'm a citizen of the world. Do you know what I mean? So it does make you think that what the hell, like the whole divide and conquer thing is so real that literally they will use any human emotion, belief, situation to divide us. Like imagine we were all united, not necessarily believing the exact same thing, but united in our values and united in wanting the same stuff, and stopped focusing on things that make us different and focus on the things that make us the same. Do you think that control of the world would be sitting with a few elites, or would we actually be able to make a difference? But they'll use anything to divide us. So in this particular situation, we're talking about anti-Semitism. So they're using religion, political beliefs to divide the population, and then you can use race, uh, economic fucking position, anything. There's a class divide, there's a race divide, there's a religious divide. It's all about division, divide and conquer. That's what's happening here, and no one's paying attention. Now, I'm not saying everything I've said in this podcast is absolutely the truth. Everything's right. I know best. No one else knows nothing. I'm not saying that. I know very little about everything that's going on. But I'm just looking at this as someone who doesn't really pay attention to politics, and and to be honest, I don't get bogged down with the news of the world because I feel like no matter how much I know, there's not much I can do about it. But after watching this thing, it just really irked me and wanted me to make this episode and talk a little bit about it. And if I can even make one person start seeing things in this light, well, hey man, that's a big difference. So yeah, I don't know, man. Uh, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and thank you guys very much for listening. Take care. Bye bye.